I have the great luxury and great pleasure of sharing with you on so many occasions extraordinary people who are doing terrific, amazing things to make our world a better place. Case in point, our very special guest on this episode of Close Up Television, Marilyn Redmond. I'm Jim Masters for Close Up Television and Radio, and we're here on location in the Seattle, Washington, Tacoma, Washington area. We're actually in the town of Edgewood, here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. It is a gorgeous area, and there's a lot of positive energy here as well. And Marilyn is part of that energy. She is a soul healer. She's a spiritual counselor, an ordained minister, a teacher. She's also a flower essence practitioner, and she's a medium, a psychic, past life regressionist. And if that's not enough, she's the author of a multitude of award-winning inspired books. I'm going to tell you about all of that and so much more. One of the things that's key about her story is her authenticity. She's somebody who's real, who's open, she's compassionate, she's empathetic, and that comes through when you chat with her. She works with her clients to help them get through life's craziness on their own journey. Oftentimes, clients are dealing with frustration and despair and depression, or maybe they're just stuck in their life. Marilyn has experienced all of those and much more. Her story is not only eye-opening and inspiring, but it's quite riveting as well. And she's going to share all of this with me and with you here on Close Up Television. So we're here at her lovely home in Edgewood, Washington, to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about this amazing woman who is doing terrific and amazing things to make our world a better place. Here's her story. Marilyn, it's a pleasure to meet you in person, and thanks for inviting us to Washington State and the Seattle, Tacoma area. It's my first time here in Pacific Northwest. It's absolutely beautiful and stunning. We got some gorgeous sunshine here. We did the radio shows together on Close Up Radio, which was really fantastic, and I wanted to dig a little deeper and find out a little bit more about your extraordinary work. So thanks for inviting me and the crew to your home.
Well, I appreciate your being here, and thank you for coming.
Now, you say that you are a soul healer. Marilyn, tell us what that is and the work you do as a soul healer.
Well, thank you. That's a good question, because so many people look at the superficial things that are happening around us and we don't go down deeper into the root cause. And so what we're acting out is old automatic ways of handling life, and they're usually based in fear. So if it's something that has been chronic in your life or generationally a situation, you're just repeating what your parents did, and you're not really living your own authentic life. So when you peel the onion, as some people call it, and move down into where did this start from? What was the original impact or trigger that happened and caused you to go into this fear and react in ways that are not rational? So as you peel the onion and find the loving ways to resolve how that happened, and you find the worthiness of who you are, your sovereignty, and that you truly are a worthy person, you can now respond in love, and your soul will open up, and that love inside of you, that soul is a piece of God, that love inside of you can now expand around you in your life. You really can create our own reality. But if we're coming from our ego, edging God out, if we're coming from that fear, we're creating what we don't want.
Right.
But if we're coming from our hearts, we're creating the harmony in life that we're looking for, and the peace of mind and the feeling of fulfillment. So it's a matter of transitioning from the old ways into the new ways and moving from your head into your heart.
Now, you have an extraordinary story that I know you've been very open about sharing, and you've been authentic in telling your story. Tell us that point, some of the triggers, some of the inspirations that pointed you into the direction of doing the work. What were moments in your life, and some of them rather dramatic, and you've been, again, very expressive about it, which we appreciate, that have sort of pointed you in this direction of internal healing for yourself? Tell us about that.
I was raised in domestic violence, and I was married in domestic violence. And through the periods of time when you don't heal the superficial ways of your handling your life, it just gets worse and worse until you finally address it. And when you finally address it, then you can see it for the truth of the situation, and you don't have to continue the same actions. And my being raised in domestic violence with lots of trauma, lots of abuse, and through becoming addicted to prescription drugs, I ended up in treatment where they taught us a spiritual path. A path of living your life in love rather than from the fear, and identifying those things that are causing the triggers to cause you to not act in your best interest. And so you start coming from a situation where you're actually promoting a better future for yourself rather than digging the hole deeper.
Right,
and so in doing that, I found meditation. They had us meditate every morning in treatment. And through the process in counseling I've been through, and I've had a lot of real helpful support through spiritual groups like Edgar Casey. And what I found out was that when I heal me, then my life around me heals. So when I didn't purposely ask for this interception from God, but when he was trying to kill me one of the times, I said, God, please help me. I really don't want to die. And that, when you make a promise or a request from the real you, then God can come in and answer your prayers. And now I didn't realize at first how much my prayer had been answered, but I'm still alive 38 years later.
Which is fantastic. What an extraordinary story, Marilyn, and thanks for sharing that. But it took a lot of work, right? You had to sort of dig yourself out of those trenches and rise up. How were you able to do that? How were you able to find it within you to allow it to rise up so you can share it with others?
Well, that's a really good question. Another time my husband was trying to kill me, I would have been another Nicole Simpson. Literally, God came in and stopped time. It felt very strange to be without that usual circumstance. And I was told in spirit to pray, this is the short version, to pray, God forgive him, for he knows not what he does, God bless him. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't get any response back, so I said it again, God forgive him, for he knows not what he does, God bless him. And then the voice said, now you can leave the room. It was back where I now have a therapy room. And so I said, well, I can't leave because I have to walk right by him. The room was smaller in those days. I have to walk right by him, and that's not safe, you know, because I won't be able to leave the room without being hurt. So angels surrounded me and took me out of the room, and I went down one end of the hall, and he came down this end and watched television, and he never touched me again. When you see God save yourself, your faith grows immediately. Right, and it was right in front of my eyes. And so that was a real turning point in my life, not only that does prayer work, but it was actually protective. I know today that prayer's your armor. When it talks in the Bible about put the armor of God on, you're actually putting love in your life and sending it out, and no one can attack love. That stops domestic violence. So I have found the answer to domestic violence. When I quit defending myself and I started sending love out, He moved out, which is unusual for someone in domestic violence. Usually the woman leaves with nothing.
Yeah.
He left. I found out a psychopath can't handle love. It's like oil and vinegar. And he left and kept coming back, but eventually I said no more. And so what I found out is that love is always the answer. And no matter what the problem is, when you send love to it, that is like a shield to you, but also repels them.
So at times, it must have been really tough for you. And of course, you know, there are times when you have your children, they're seeing some of what's going on. It can get very, very difficult. And I imagine with the despair, depression, and everything, where you felt not only depression, but you felt oppressed, you might have even decided you wanted to check out.
Well, that exactly is what happened. I felt that things were terrible, horrible, and awful, and they'd always stay the same. I had no option because when I was 3 years old, I saw my dad beat up my mom, and I thought I was next. And I went into a protective emotional shell. And I stayed emotionally 3 years old till I got to treatment and realized I could grow up and it would be safe. So, yeah, I tried suicide several times. And the first time I actually saw my angels helping me, I was overdosing on pills the doctor gave me that I got addicted to. They were in those days, they were very cheap. You could get, through insurance, you could get like a 3-month supply for $1. You know, so he gave me Valium, which is very addicting. And I went out with my pills, and the angels showed up and stopped me. I'm here because I've almost died 13 times.
13 times.
And every time, either God or my angels have shown up and kept me alive. And I needed that for my work. When I came into this lifetime, it was to help others.
Yeah.
And in the preface of my big book, Paradigm Busters, I explained that when I came in, I said, I want to come and help people because I know the answers. And God said, well, you have to go through the experiences they're having so they'll hear you. You're on the same wavelength emotionally, and they'll see you came through it and on the other side, and they can do it too. So my script for my life has been very traumatic, and it's probably more than most people have had to go through if I listed all the situations. But it's been very valuable, so when someone does come for counseling, when they start talking, I immediately know what the answer is, because I've been there, and I know what happens and how it works. So even though I wasn't thrilled going through these experiences, it's become very valuable, and it's a real treasure today to have answers that work. And they aren't the answers we've been taught through our regular culture.
Tell us about that.
I just finished a book, A Spark of Truth, where I expose how this all came together. And in that book, it explains for over the last 2,000 years that the government, which was under Constantine, and the Catholic Church got together at Nicene Creed, the Nicene Council in 325 AD, and they wrote the Nicene Creed, which actually changed the Bible's interpretation, well, the Bible's sacred text to be different than, so people are learning what is not the original voices and messages of Jesus. And they changed it for you to look outside for the answers rather than to look within. And that gives them power and control and authority over you. So, and it teaches fear, and they can control and manipulate you. And this has gradually been growing very subtly through all these many years. And people today are thinking from their ego or their head, edging God out, and not from their heart, because we've been conditioned to do that. And so we are look to government to save us, look to religion to save us, look to education to provide our answers. And that's not where the answers are. The answers are within. So it's affecting us today in a very strong way, as most people would recognize in their lives. It's very chaotic, as we've discussed. And it's because when you're coming from fear, people are easily manipulated and controlled, and they aren't rational. And sometimes they're called sheeple.
Sheeple, right?
They aren't
Sheep and
thinking
people
for their,
together.
they aren't
Yeah.
thinking for themselves. And what I'm about is to help people think for themselves. What's right for you might not be right for somebody else. Just because it's on the news doesn't mean it's the truth. Sort it out, do the research. That's what I encourage people when they read the book. I said, this is just a spark. Do the research and find out more of what I'm talking about. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And find out how these things got changed along the way, and it's been very subtle. The people that have been purporting this, the elite or cabal, whatever you call them, have a plan that are like 50 years, 500 years of how they're going to do this. It's not overnight. It's a very subtle training. And so it's not always easy to move into the truth and the understanding that we've been brainwashed or programmed. But as you peel the onion, as I mentioned, gradually you start to say, oh, this isn't the way things really are or the way they're supposed to be. I've been told other than what's accurate and truthful. So it's a progression of growing into, and we call this maturity. I have a couple stories about that. The little boy is in the bedroom at night in the darkness, and he says, Mommy, Mommy, there's a boogeyman in here. So Mommy comes in and turns on the light. There's no boogeyman in here. We're turning on the light. We don't have to see the darkness and the boogeyman and the fear anymore. If we turn to the light of the universe that created us, we don't have to live in that fear-based indoctrination. We can be ourselves and be the true people that we are and come from authenticity.
That's important, right? To come from authenticity.
Right.
And sometimes it takes time and life lived to get to that point, right? Because there's so many outside influences that tell us how to live, tell us what to think, tell us what to do, every aspect of our lives, and it takes time to live through life and experience the things, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the indifferent, to sometimes come to that point of authenticity, right?
It takes a lifetime. And that's where some people get impatient because we'd like to be wonderful overnight.
Instant gratification.
And yeah, instant gratification, you're exactly right. And it's a matter of evolving, and as we peel the onion, then more will be revealed, and so more will be revealed and we grow. And what we do is we grow into maturity, and we've been little kids that have been hoodwinked, and we don't have to stay there anymore. So it's a matter of, do you want to face those situations that are upsetting and realize and turn your language around, so to say, this is an opportunity for me to grow spiritually, for me to find the true me. If you don't face your situation now, you're going to get it again, and it's going to be a worse and more difficult one. So when people tend to run the other way, that's what we do if we don't grow up. We don't face reality. So if you're willing to face the reality of the situation, then it goes away. I had a traumatic experience just show up this last week. Very, very difficult to deal with. And so I went into ballistics, okay? But I have the tools today to understand emotionally I wasn't ready for that sooner. I couldn't have handled it and had the ability to understand why it worked that way and resolve it and come into compassion. It's not easy to do sometimes because of this situation. But
Well, that wasn't the hot water heater, was it?
no. I found out the real reason my mother was killed. Okay, so it wasn't what I was told.
All these years you
All
thought it
these
was
years
something
I was
different?
Yeah, I wasn't ready to hear it.
And did you investigate that? That's how you found it out?
It came in meditation.
Wow.
That I was finally ready to understand the truth about the whole, and I'd been lied to.
Had you, what you learned as a result, did it match something that you inside always thought it might have been? How it?
Well, it was kind of, I was so shut down in so many ways in my life growing up. I don't think I was ready to hear that. And everything comes up at the perfect time. We're doing exactly where we're supposed to be right now, and it doesn't come sooner, and it doesn't, and whatever you are doing and you think, am I on the right path? You're on the right path. There's no mistakes.
Some of the work, again, is absolutely extraordinary, and I'd love to know about the people you work with. Now, of course, it's not a cookie-cutter approach. It's not one size fits all,
but a lot of the folks you work with are coming to you for healing, for solace, for guidance, to find that inner peace in their own life's journey like you have found. Tell us about some of the things that your clients deal with and they're struggling with along the way.
Well, I've had a lot of ladies show up that are codependent. And that means they're depending on a fellow to take care of them and to save them and to be there. So, one of my parts of, I had a lot of codependent issues. And one was that if I had a lot of expenses, how could I ever cover them if I'm not married and I have a husband who has income too? So my part of mine was fear of insecurity, fear of financial insecurity. So I stayed in that domestic violence for many years because I didn't think I could make it financially on my own, even though I was teaching. And the money was always his. If you're a psychopath, lived with a psychopath, the money's his. So
even if you earned it, he's controlling
it was his money. So I didn't have any financial stability to leave at that point, and I didn't get out until I got into treatment and saw life from a different point of view. So some people are very codependent. I've had people show up that had a great deal of disagreement with their family, and so I can talk to those passed over. And through that communication, and I actually can verbalize, channel the person talking to them, and they can talk back. And what they find out generally is they've had a miscommunication, and they've used that as a way to not get along, to have a conflict. And so when one was a retired minister, and he says, if that's the problem, it was just misunderstanding, and they were both happy on both sides of the realm. I had a real interesting client who showed up with a thyroid problem, but it was really, she was so out of control. She had been dumped on her grandparents' doorstep because the parents were alcoholics off doing their thing. So she was really, really angry that her grandparents had to raise her, and her parents were not there for her. Abandonment is what it is.
Right.
And so we worked on the issue, and we worked on getting her to understand better how to look at it and handle, her emotional responses and so forth. And so one day she showed up, and she says, I'm meeting my mom for lunch. I mean, my jaw just dropped to the floor because this lady was actually a high school senior. She was really angry at her parents, and especially her mother. Mm-hmm. And so that she was happy about going to have lunch with her mother, and I thought, oh, wow, that's great. So I asked her, I said, do you mind if we go in and ask your body what the problem is for your thyroid condition and the results of how to heal it? And in those days, I taped it on a tape recorder. Now I use an MP3 recorder. So I went into her body consciousness and asked what caused the anger and whatever, and the thyroid. And they told me, we made her so sick to get her focus off her mother because it was just totally destroying her. Mm-hmm. So we made her sick with a different focus. And then it also told her what to do to cure it and heal it. She went home and followed directions of what her body told her to do. And a couple months later, she came back, she says, I don't need my thyroid medicine anymore. So that's the kind of things that go on.
Tell us about Angelica's gifts.
Well, that's an interesting question. Because I have a lot of different talents, and I wasn't quite sure how to pool them into kind of one unit. And I was on a walk one day with my girlfriend, and my cat was named Angelica after my angel. But she's my main, I have 6 angels. She's my main angel, besides Archangel Michael. And she's the one that helps me a lot daily. And she says, well, why don't you just call what you do Angelica's gifts? So I have gifts from the spiritual world of my angels telling me and helping me. So when people show up for counseling or for help, or when I'm writing the book, Archangel Michael channels that. But when I'm doing and working like painting or whatever, that's the energy that's flowing through me. And so whatever I'm doing, it comes from Angelica. I'm just the channel. It's not me. I'm just the implement of what's going on.
You're the facilitator of that energy.
Right. And it's through Angelica's help that I've been able to do what I do.
So what are some of the things you learned about yourself, Marilyn, along the way that brought you to this point of healing and of peace in your life?
That's exactly what we're all coming to, heaven on earth. And that's why life is so crazy right now, is we're sorting out the darkness from the light. And as the light obliterates, as the little boy in the dark room, as the light obliterates the darkness, we're all going to come into peace. But it's an individual trip. And my books show you the process, especially Paradigm Buster, shows you the process of how to release that darkness so that you can come into the light and your heart can be filled with that love and forgiveness and compassion that we need, so that we're in harmony with each other and working together and supportive of each other. So it's a matter of our transitioning. So the planet already has moved into the fifth dimension, but we individually need to move and match with it.
You also do work, which is pretty fascinating, as a past life regressionist. Tell us first what a past life regressionist is, and then how you do it.
Well, very interesting question. A past life regressionist, it's a form of hypnosis. Meditation, hypnosis, and regression are all basically different terms for what people can handle. Some people can handle hypnosis, some people can handle meditation. Oh, I wouldn't do hypnosis, but so it's a term, pick the term you want. When you go into your consciousness, there are fearful veils. We call them, crossing the veils, some people do. And you move beyond the current where you are into other aspects of your life. And those past lives are the lessons we're healing today. So when I put a person in, I'm an international board regression therapist, and I also am on the board of American Therapy. And as you go into that altered state, now we're always in an altered state every morning when we wake up and every night when we go to sleep. It's just before you conk out, you're no longer in the ego, but you're moved into your higher consciousness. So there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just that you're searching deeper than what you would in a typical normal day. So as you go into the right past life will show up. I mean, the life that you're supposed to look at shows up. Your body knows, your consciousness knows what you're supposed to look at to heal next. And so as that surfaces up to the surface, I ask the person various questions of where are you, do you have shoes on, what are you wearing, and what's the calendar say for the year, and what does your house look like, or what kind of food or transportation. So we can put a year on it and have people show up in the regression that are also usually people in this lifetime that have been with you before, and the experience that happened in that lifetime that led you to the problems you're having today. So we go back, that's part of being a soul healer, you go back to where it started and heal it from that perspective of what happened in those days. Oh, people will say, oh, I understand, that wasn't such a big deal. But when, at the time you're in it, you think it's a big deal. But when you see it from a perspective of how it could have, why it came together, we don't always understand how the dynamics come together that we need to grow. And when we see that that person actually was helping us in a situation rather than not helping us, and so we're angry, resentful, and you can come into harmony and say, oh, that, I understand that now, it doesn't have to be a problem, I'm okay. So when people leave, it's like I've healed a little part of the universe. And I feel so good, because all those parts of us need to be healed. Some of them are quite deep, and doing regression or past life therapy heals not only today's issues, but deeper issues from the past, and they need to be healed too.
Now you're talking about today. How do you deal with folks who are current life aggressionists?
Well, what happens in many cases, people that are aggressive, according to the book A Course in Miracles, they're crying out for help. They're actually, the bully is actually the weak one.
Yeah.
Then they're compensating to show I'm not weak. I want to show you how good I am, and I'm going to just, buffalo you, which is where bullying is. And so when you start to realize that they're crying out from their weakness and start sending love, like I did with my husband when he was trying to kill me, when you send love, you actually are providing them with the love they're looking for. They don't have to be a bully because finally they feel better inside. The hole has been filled and that they didn't feel before.
You know what I love about this is so much of your work, if not all of it, comes from a place of love and understanding. Why is that important to have love and understanding? And why is it vital for all of us to live in unconditional love? Animals give off unconditional love, but you feel that we all should come from a place of unconditional love. Why is that so important?
We were all created in that place and we're returning to it. We're the prodigal son. And we're all learning what are the barriers that stop us from returning. Animals don't have an ego, that's why they're perfect love. So when you move out of your head or your ego, which is where the fear has been programmed, and you move into your heart, you're not having the same situation. You're sending out the love that you want, and the peace comes from that.
So, we all talk about, and sometimes it's just a phrase, but nobody does anything about it, trying to make the world a better place. Like I always say, and I've always said it even since I was a kid, I try to leave the room better than I found it. Why is it important for us to do that, and how do we go about doing that?
That's a great question, because when you leave the world a better place, you're actually creating your future. What happens is, if most people are living in the past of their woundedness, we're all come in here with lessons to learn, calling it woundedness, and we all react from the woundedness, and we're recreating the past. You talk about history recreating itself. We're recreating the past. When you release and do the onion peeling and move into the now, that's reality. Right now, in my case, I have a roof over my head. I have finances that I can pay my bills. I have a car to get where I need for groceries. Everything's just fine. I have everything I need. I'm okay. When I am improving my life today, I'm literally improving tomorrow. I create my own reality, like you said, by leaving it in a better way. I have improved my life. Your life gets better each day you do that. So that's the perfect way to live, is how can I be a better person today, and I know my world will expand and provide for me the needs and everything I need, and it'll go smoothly and better. I'll feel better about it.
What would you say to somebody who maybe they don't come from a faith-based background, or maybe the understanding of God and a spirituality, but yet they are seeking healing and peace and solace in their lives? What would you say to somebody like that? How do you work with them? How do you get them to the place of inner peace and healing in their lives?
Excellent question. It's kind of like superseding the spiritual terminology. I'm a big fan of quantum physics. And what quantum physics does is it explains the energy of the universe without the labels of the church. So if you understand quantum physics, you're really talking about the same thing. The problem is the labels. People will fight for certain words. You have to think this way, you have to do this way. And the labels are just a way to determine that particular energy. As I said when we were talking earlier, Tesla said if you want to understand the universe, it's about energy, which most people call God. Okay, it's about energy, vibration, and frequency. So, and in Paradigm Busters and in my last book, I have a diagram in there showing how we raise our vibrations from fear into that love. It doesn't really matter how you label it. Some people call it Allah, some people call it Chi, the life force energy is what medicine will call it. It doesn't really matter how you label it. It's what's in your heart. You feel, it's all about feelings. And what the indoctrination has done is to stop the feelings. That's why AI is so lacking. There's no, it's a technology, it's not human. Humans have feelings. And if you lose, and that's where I was a robot for 50 years because I had no feelings. Today, I had an experience this week, I dealt with it, I moved on. But the feelings have to be felt and dealt with in appropriate ways for you to be able to be a human being, and you evolve past it into a higher consciousness of more and more love comes into your life.
You're a published author, and congratulations, Marilyn, and so many incredible books and so much material, years of writing and sharing. You know, they always talk about roses have thorns. My father, loves roses throughout the yard, and I learned early as a kid, roses do have thorns, but it's the title of your very first book. Tell us about Roses Have Thorns.
Well, that book was produced because I was going to a writing class, and I was writing poetry at the time, and I had quite a few poems written, and my teacher was also a publisher. So I went up to her after class one time and I said, "Would you publish my poems for me?" And so she said she was waiting until I had asked her, because she says that book belongs in every counselor's office in their office area for the people waiting. So she wanted to publish it, and I wanted to call it Thorns Have Roses. And she says, "No, we're going to call it Roses Have Thorns." Now, at the time, I didn't understand the significance of that. But that book is my life in poetry form of things I went through to get to where I turned to the spiritual answers. And in poetry form, I described the different parts of my life. So it's kind of a biography in poetry, you might say.
Were you ever resistant or hesitant to be so expressive about the personal details of your life and your experience at all?
Big time, because you don't talk about those things. In fact, I had several past lives where I was killed for telling the truth. And so I was taking a class based in faith at the time, faith-based class in Seattle. Those classes are still going on. And I had to stand up and share some things, and I just got mortified. The voice inside said, "Marilyn, you can share it the way it is and you won't be killed this time." And so it's been a gradual faith-building situation. I'm more open and honest about it today.
You're a work in progress continually,
Yeah.
right? You're not done.
I'm not done.
Every day is a new experience.
I'm definitely a work in progress.
That's fantastic. And then the other book, too, of many, Paradigm Busters, Reveal the Real You. Tell us about this one.
That book took 25 years to write.
25 years.
Because as I was writing it, and I know today Archangel Michael was giving me the information to put it onto paper, I was growing myself. And so as I'm writing it and producing the book, it was the things that I was learning. So as I learned, the book kept progressing itself until it was, I came to a time at one point where nothing happened. And I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, you aren't ready to finish the book yet." So then I jumped in and finished when it was the right time. It's the actual ultimate book for changing from your ego into your heart. And it shows you the pattern necessary to remove all the fears, the resentments, and the sexual behaviors that have broken and stopped the love from being able to manifest. And it also includes holistic health help to change your old behaviors into those that are going to be productive, so that you've changed your life from a fear-based life into a love-based life where you're connected with the universe and all good things can happen.
Here's another great book, Finding Reality Beyond Fear. Tell us about this one.
Well, that's the follow-through from Paradigm Busters.
I love the cover too.
Oh, well, we've changed the cover from now I'm going through Amazon. They've been helping me get new covers, and that's the latest cover for it. As you're going through changing yourself into being in reality, beyond the fear, it has the daily things you can do to tell yourself and help yourself with your behaviors to maintain that. And then it carries you into connecting with higher spiritual forces so that you can become Christ-like.
Really? That's incredible. It's amazing. I mean, these really are, there's so much empathy and compassion and love in these books. This is another one I know you're excited about, A Spark of Truth.
Well, I'm very proud of it, and that's kind of getting past the fear of being killed for telling the truth. This book has been a challenge because it has brought up a lot of issues most people don't want to look at.
And this is your newest book.
This is my
at the
newest
time of this filming, yeah.
Yeah, this has been just out recently, and it's a book to expose the brainwashing and the programming that we have gone through for several thousand years to be in the problems we have today. And it's the history, and it brings it up to the present, how it's affecting us today. So it's a book that brings awareness of moving out of the old oppression that we've been under through the agenda behind the scene. What we think has been going on and on the news is not what's going on. And so we've been told what they want us to know rather than what's really happening. And this book is an expose. It's a whistleblowing type book.
It is, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So who is the book designed for? What do you hope people get out of it?
Well, the book is designed for all those that want a better life, and we don't have to live under the influences of those that have been running the show. We have not had a constitution that we've been living under. We've been deceived about that. It became a corporation in 1871, and we're being returned to the Constitution, and it tells in the book how that change is occurring, and there are forces behind what you aren't told on the news that are creating us back to the life that we were created to live, not the one that the people in the agenda are saying that we should live for their benefit. The book is bringing us back into the authenticity and the authority and the sovereignty of who we really are, not what we've been told and taught.
You know, sometimes the author is so popular and the books just fly off the shelves, they don't even have a copy of their own book. Here's one of them, otherwise we'd have it here for you, but this is The Real Meaning of 2012, Heaven on Earth. Marilyn, tell us about this book. It sounds fascinating.
I'm a channeler, medium, and I was channeling one particular, my art room I also use for channeling groups, and I channeled this information from Saint Germain. At the end of the channeling, Saint Germain told me, he says, now you're going to put that information into a book. So that's the result. And what it basically has, it explains our ego dimensions of third dimension. It explains fourth dimension is the transition into we grow through fourth dimension into the loving of who we are, God consciousness, into fifth dimension of unconditional love. And that book explains the different dimensions. Now, it's not like you're going up a ladder because different parts of you grow at different times, but when you put it all together, eventually we'll be whole. And it's a matter of understanding that the planet has moved into we used to have the darkness. The energy of the planet has gone through the photon belt, which is Christ consciousness. The planet is in Christ consciousness. We need to grow into that at this point, and having the awareness and now the knowledge that that's who we are, that's who we've always been. So it's explaining the different dimensions of what we're going through so that we know that that's just part of the traveling that we need to do emotionally. People can really change their own lives just by looking and handling life differently than they are doing in their daily life. And so these books are how can you maintain your life as we know it today, but still improve it. And the real hard work is in Paradigm Busters, but how can you on a daily, and like you were mentioning, make tomorrow better? So it's how can you live today and make tomorrow better with the tools that you have now.
You are also a medium, a channeler. Tell us about that.
Well, I love being a channeler. What I know today is that the material life that we've been living has been very, as I mentioned earlier, programmed into us to be fearful. And when you're channeling, you're coming from the spirit world of a higher consciousness. So when I'm channeling, I channel a variety of different entities that have already passed on. Because they've grown and learned all this, they pass it on through me. So I have John the Baptist, John from the Bible, the books of John. John is one of my main channelers. Archangel Michael channels through me. I've channeled Jesus at Christmas times for messages. Mother Mary has brought messages. Archangel Ariel channels through me and loves to give blessings to the people that are there. I've actually had God bring messages. My fellow needed to hear some information, and this is from God. So, and he's also a minister and channels and so forth, and he gave me some answers too, that from Spirit, that you wouldn't get otherwise. It's the truth. It's the pure truth that has not been altered by human editing.
And you're a psychic too, and you know, sometimes there's confusion between psychic and medium. You're both. Tell us the differences and tell us about your work as a psychic.
There is a difference between being a psychic and a medium.
Right.
And a lot of people do not understand. They call them the same thing.
Yeah, they say psychic medium. Yeah.
Right, and I am both actually, but some people call themselves one thing when they're really another. If you're into theosophy, and it took me twice to read Madame Bolinsky's book, okay, to differentiate, a psychic reaches those people passed over that are in third and fourth dimension. A medium connects with higher dimensions, fifth dimension and higher. That's why I can bring in Jesus and Archangel Michael and whatever. It's not just your relatives that have passed over. So there actually are different dimensions that you connect with, and they're not the same. I happen to be fortunately that as I've grown spiritually, it's changed that I can do the higher connecting. So a psychic, if you want to know more about your family's history or your past, things that are more current in your experience in growing, a psychic will help you with that. If you're interested in more spiritual, truthful answers, a medium can bring that information in.
You're also, among all the other incredible things that you do and you are, you're an ordained minister too.
Well, I found out when I was writing Paradigm Busters. I had a mentor, and he says, well, you've got to get yourself credentials so people will believe you, you know, because you just can't have your name out there. You know, you have to have letters after your name.
Yeah.
So I happened to meet and was fortunate enough to take a class from Linda Schiller Hanna. You became a minister through the courses, okay? It was like a university kind of a situation. And so I took her classes quite a few times, and I was ordained because of the training. And it was for me to be able to do spiritual counseling and become a medium and help people, of course, with answers at work. And so being a minister has given me an umbrella, you might say. People think of you as having some authority. The nice part about all of it is God's doing the work. It doesn't matter what the letters are behind your name, but anyway, it looks and it's impressive. And but it has also taught me how to see people through the eyes of love. And when they show up on my doorstep, you know, I can feel where their pain is, and because I've been through so many situations in my life, I can understand where they're at. That's what a real counselor can do. Most counselors go through school and it's all head training. And through this courses of learning to be a spiritual minister, my training is from my experience. And so that's where healing comes, is when you can share your wisdom, so to speak, or experience with another person. That's when love grows and you feel better, but that's also how the healing happens. So if you go to a counselor that just has book training, it's not as effective, it's superficial. And
Right.
What I'm doing actually comes from the reality of life and my heart, and from what's going to actually do the changing that you need.
What is your overall message for all of this extraordinary work and all of the things that you've experienced? I think that's one of the great things about you in particular, Marilyn, is because you've lived life, because you are a work in progress, and you know that, and you're in tune with that, you have the ability to, in a very uncanny but authentic and real way, relate to everybody else, almost feel their pain in a way too. What is an overall goal and or message for the work that you do?
Well, it's really very simple. Life can be very simple. Our ego, our brain complicates it and makes it makes it complicated, so you have all those levels to sort out and get to love heals. And so all things come from love, all things return to love, and as we do that, our life magnifies into heaven on earth.
What would the Marilyn Redmond of today say to that Marilyn Redmond of years ago?
Good question. I would tell her, honey, everything's going to turn out okay. I know today that whatever you're going through, you're going to come out on the other side and be better off for it. So just enjoy the ride and know that it'll work out.
What would you say to somebody right now who is like a Marilyn Redmond and they're going through something similar, or just things in their life where they feel stuck, they feel they're in despair, they feel like there's no hope? And right now, you know, at the time of our filming, the world is projecting sort of that negativity, that everything is dull and dark and in disrepair, when you can look out your window and the sun is shining and there is hope out there. What would you say to that person that is in that really dark place right now and they can't lift themselves out?
Well, I'm not a, I cherry pick out of the Bible the things that really work. And there's two verses that I definitely go with. One is, all things work for good in those that love God and are in His path. So if your motivation is love, that's what's going to come about, And the other one is, perfect love casts out all fear. So as you put that loving energy to replace the fears, you peel the onion and replace it with love and grace. That's part of what Paradigm Buster explains, how to do that. You become that loving person that you always really were. You're coming back into being the person you were created to be. And so the more you look for, and in Paradigm Busters I have a whole list of items of how you can change your consciousness into that love, so that perfect love can come in and grow, and you can just feel better about life. As you are growing it, you can actually feel better about it instead of stay in your old despair.
Because a lot of times people stay, again, stuck in that and they just don't know how to move forward in it.
It's a choice. And I didn't realize what a choice it was. I didn't purposely try to stay sick and as a child or whatever. That's what I was conditioned, for my family. So I had to find outside sources. And that's why books like mine, I hope, provide people with the idea that I don't have to stay in the past. I can outgrow it and grow up and become a mature person and have the life that I was created to have. So we have to hear from others that it's possible.
What are some of your future plans?
Interesting question. I don't know if this fits the program or not. When we go back into being under the Constitution, some changes are going to be made medically. People are going to be able to access their true health, and we won't need the medical facilities and experiences that are going on at this current time. People will regain their health, because when you're in a higher consciousness, you aren't sick. You were created healthy. It's the lack of the spiritual energy that makes the sickness, okay? So as people are getting into their health, their emotional life has to check in and connect with that. So it's the same level instead of like this. What happens when people pass over to the other side, they don't go directly to, you can call it nirvana or heaven or whatever term you want. You don't go directly into it because your energy's lower, and it's a higher energy of just spirit. There is a transition. My job in the near future will be to help people bring those two levels into connecting, so that you're actually matching from what you used to be into what you have grown into. So my job is to help with that transition.
Going to take a look at the art studio you have and the writing room where a lot of the action happens. But what are some of the things about this work that bring you such joy and blessing in your own life, Marilyn?
every morning when you say, what do you say in the morning? I always thank God for all my many blessings. I mean, compared to where I was prior years, I'm living in grace and heaven on earth today. And I appreciate it, and the more I help others, it just seems, I just feel better and better. My life just seems to, things show up in my life that I didn't even ask for. My needs are met before I even have to ask for it. You know, this is a silly example, but I needed a new kitchen floor. I'd mentioned about this to the gal that cut my hair. Her husband does repairs on their rentals. They showed up one day with tile and whatever they needed, and they said, we're here to do your floor. I never asked them. They just showed up at the front door and said, we're here to do it for you. We know you need a new floor. So that's the kind of things that happen to me today. God brings me what I need before I even know it.
And now we're in the art studio here at Marilyn's beautiful home, and it really is nice. It's so comfortable in here. I love the use of all the windows, the natural lighting, beautiful manicured lawn you have here and yard, which I know inspires you. Tell us about what happens in your art studio here.
Well, I love painting angels and my family, especially my great-grandchildren. And I've been fortunate that angels actually have appeared. I was painting one day and this angel showed up, and I couldn't figure out what color hair to give her. And I tried blonde, and I tried brown, and I tried various, you know, the colors of, she said very indignantly, angels can have an attitude. She said very indignantly, I have black hair. And when I headed for the black paint, it just painted itself and finished its self-picture. So they come through me as I'm painting. And when I do my great-grandchildren, which is my great-grandson and my great-granddaughter,
Unreal.
and I'm starting some new ones now, and it's very rewarding. And it's not me again, it's the energy flowing through me, because there's a picture in the hallway where I painted it one afternoon, and I got up and I said, oh, I did that?
Right, you're facilitator, the conduit of the energy that comes out and through you and is expressed in this exquisite art.
Right.
How many hours do you spend in this part of the home?
Well, not as much as I'd like, where I've been doing the book work lately.
Yes, the writing.
And that, when we're hopefully through with some of this presentation work that we've been doing, I'd like to get back at my artwork a little more, because it's a nice balance in my life, and I appreciate being able to do it, but I feel so connected when I'm doing it, and then that's the part I really enjoy.
The writing room is where a lot of action happens as well. These books are written and so much more. You've also been a columnist. Let's take a look at the writing room.
Okay.
So this is the writing room here, huh?
Yes, and when I sit in this chair, it's like I'm not me anymore. The writing just shows up.
Again, the energy, you're the conduit, it sort of flows through you again.
Exactly, and when I wrote A Spark of Truth,
Yeah.
it was like Archangel Michael was right here. When I was doing the research, it was like he put me right on the pages I needed, the information that I needed next. I thought, what's the next chapter gonna be? All of a sudden, I just knew what it was, and I sat down, and that book has really totally just flowed through me.
So every aspect of your house is used for certain purposes, which is extraordinary.
Well, it's been very beneficial since the family moved out. This was my son's bedroom originally.
Was it really?
Yeah. So I moved, it's a computer room. The art studio I added because I needed the light that you recommended.
Yeah.
My house was too dark for painting with natural light.
Yeah.
And I wanted the natural light. And then my daughter's room became my therapy room.
So you're a flower essence practitioner. And the bottles we were looking at, tell us about that, and tell us about your work as a flower essence practitioner.
Well, what I learned was that Dr. Bach in England several years ago identified different flowers have different energy. And those energies can be used to push out, like perfect love casts out all fear. When you take these energies of the flowers, they actually will change your emotions so that they're healthier. Wow. The fear will leave. You know, we are to flow energy. The love flows in and the fear flows out. And if you stop the flow, you're sick. That's what illness is all about.
Right.
So if you have that flow going on, and the flower essences help that, it's like taking acupuncture in liquid.
Sure.
Same idea. You want to get rid of the blockages so that you're healthy and the flowing energy can replace it. So depending on the issues that the people are dealing with, you know, if it's anxiety or fear, insecurity, being unworthy, guilty, each flower essence can address those. And as you're taking them, they're very subtle, but they're very effective. And I have people use affirmations to help support that. So they're claiming the truth of who they are and releasing what's not authentic.
That's incredible. So this is the therapy room where a lot of the therapeutic results happen.
Definitely, yeah, that's their chair. They recline, it reclines, and they go into regression. And sometimes if they, as a couple, I'll use the 2 chairs. If they have a lot of anger, we'll face it a person against the other person. I'm in one and they're the other. They pretend I'm the person they're angry at.
Oh, okay.
And they express it and get it out.
Towards you, right.
So there's another way to do it too. They hit the basket. But there's different things that you can do to help people get rid of the energy they don't want, the negative.
Get it
so
out.
there's room.
If
you have to make room for the new to come in.
Yeah.
And if you don't change you, nothing changes around you.
Take a look at this. We're here with the Lady of the Angels. Tell us about this, Marilyn.
I was going through the line at the grocery store when they had the National Enquirer days. And I no longer took the National Enquirer, but they had one at the counter when you check out, and it ended up in my basket. I said, my angels were with me shopping. I said, I don't need that. I don't read that anymore. They said, put it in your basket. So I brought it home and I was going to throw it out. They wouldn't let me throw it out. They said, just open it. So I opened it. The paper was asking for people's angel stories.
Yeah.
So I said, well, my angel stories aren't any better than anybody else's, so why would I do that? You know, they said, I happen to have these photographs on the counter. They said, put the pictures in with your story. And I was called on the telephone and they interviewed me for the story I gave them was when I went off the Grand Canyon cliff. Angels saved us. And so they liked it so much because I had pictures they could put in the newspaper and it wasn't just a story. So I ended up being the centerfold.
Lady of the Angels, the centerfold. I'm here with the centerfold, Lady of the Angels. Fantastic story. Marilyn, this was absolutely spectacular. Thank you so much for inviting us into your lovely home. This really was a very moving and impactful conversation. And thank you for being so open and so honest and so real, and you're dedicated to this. This is your calling, it's in your DNA, and as you help others heal, you continue your healing journey as well. Really appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to meet you in person as well.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you came.
What an absolutely amazing and moving conversation and story here on this episode of Close Up Television, talking with Marilyn Redmond. You know, as I mentioned, she does a lot of things, but all of it is tied together to the fact that she feels she is a conduit, a facilitator of energy that's greater than herself, that she shares with others. She's a healer. She's, as I said, empathetic and compassionate, which you saw during our conversation. But also, she's a very artistic and creative person, almost third eye way of thinking. Really profound opportunity to come to her home and share this story with you. And I hope you were moved by it. If you were, and if you'd like to reach out to Marilyn and connect with her, find out about how you can get the books and maybe sessions and so much more with her, you can go to her website, angelicasgifts.com. What an incredible time we've had here, and I am absolutely moved by it, and I hope you were as well. For all of us at Close Up Television and Radio in Edgewood, Washington, just between Seattle and Tacoma, I'm Jim Masters, Close Up Television and Radio. Thanks for joining us.